now that you have made some new friends, we can start the session. And now that you have made your introductions, I wanted to introduce myself very briefly. My name is Joana Lenkova. I'm a European. And in fact, I was born in one of the oldest countries in Europe. It was established in 681, not 16, 681. And until today, it hasn't changed its name. I wasn't going to ask you to guess which one it is, but would you guess which one it is? Okay, it's Bulgaria. So I was born in Bulgaria. I am a Londoner for the past 11 years. And for the record, I consider myself a European in London as well. I am a futurist and strategist. I work for the Lego Group. I'm the futurology director there. I am here, however, in my personal capacity as a founder of Futures Forward, a consultancy that I founded in 2019. I am very, very passionate about strategic foresight, so passionate, in fact, that I'm currently writing a book and trying to make foresight practical. I love doing scenario planning. I love writing things about the future and narratives. But what I love more is how do we take these and we implement them into our companies, into policymaking, into NGOs. So yeah, it doesn't have to be only for the corporate world, but I know the majority of you come from there. I am also very passionate about the future of childhood. And I have worked for the Walt Disney Company. I work for the Lego Group now. I am really passionate about that, and I'm passionate about intergenerational fairness. So this is perhaps why I do foresight, because I want to make sure that my actions and the people that get inspired around me get to work towards a future that is better for the children, but also for any generation that lives after us. And with that in mind, I want to get into the practical stuff. So strategic foresight. What is strategic foresight? Strategic foresight, just like strategy, comes from the military. We often call our world volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. So the VUCA acronym also comes from the military. What you may not know is that in the corporate world, strategic foresight and scenario planning is most, so Shell is the company that is most famous for using strategic foresight for a very, very long time. And I would like to tell you a story about the living company. So the gentleman here is Arie de Geus. He was a head of the scenario planning department when Shell was about to turn 100 years old. So they wanted to understand, him and his team, they wanted to understand whether there are other companies that are longer, that have lived for a very, very long time, and that have remained successful, to learn from them, of course. So they did extensive research, and they found about 30 companies that were living longer than Shell at the time. And very much to my surprise, they're companies, these are the two oldest companies. They're companies that have been around for centuries. So the very oldest company on record is Stora Enso, the Swedish Stora Enso, which exists today. And it was established in 1288. So imagine how many centuries ago. The other one is the Sumitomo Corporation. So these two are the oldest living companies. And they have lived through 2 world wars, through the Industrial Revolution. It looks like the technological revolution hasn't really impacted them in a negative way. So what are the key traits that make these companies so successful? And how do they adapt for centuries in a world that is changing? So the team of Arie de Geus did this research, and they came up with 4 key traits. One of them, I'm not going to discuss in detail because I think it kind of makes sense, and it is about financial literacy and just being, well-balanced with your finances. So that's clear. The other 3, however, are interesting. The first one is sensitivity to the world around. The second one is high tolerance to new ideas. And the third one is clear identity. So staying true to your values and understanding and agreeing and having everybody who works for you and with you kind of having the same understanding of what your company or institution stands for, and equally important, what it doesn't stand for. So interestingly, all these three traits are also traits of strategic foresight. So coming back to the topic of strategic foresight and what it is, to me at least, it's both a methodology and a mindset. So when I tell people I'm a futurist, I usually get the question of, well, two questions really. If they're more respectful, they would just ask me, what is it that you do? If they want to joke around, they tell me, where's your crystal ball? And I don't have a crystal ball. We don't predict the future. So that's my first answer, and I always have to say that. That's not the point of strategic foresight. The point of strategic foresight is to become better tuned to the external environment, to the opportunities that might be there, and to anticipate a little bit better. But we can never guarantee, we will never predict. There's always going to be some player that is big enough to change history. So somebody may wake up tomorrow and decide to do something that will impact all of our lives. We cannot predict, but we can anticipate. Equally, I think it's a matter of a mindset. And as I started the presentation, I told you one of the key things that we like to do with foresight, and it's essential, is to seek other opinions, because we can be so blinded by our own beliefs that it's really hard to do innovation that way. And innovation usually comes from another industry, or the ideas come from elsewhere, not necessarily from the immediate circle that we have of similar people. We need to seek even opposing views, so views that don't confirm necessarily what we believe in, and challenge it. One of the things that we do differently than strategy, and to me, strategic foresight does not replace strategic planning. It adds to strategic planning. It just makes it better. And this is one of the differences. We usually start with the external world. So we look at macro trends. We think about what could they mean if they clash. What are the different ways in which they will impact the world? And it matters to us because we're going to live in this world. Not only our companies, but also, the most important part is that the people who are our consumers, or the people who we make policies for, will live in this world in 10 years' time or 20 years' time. That directly impacts our industry. It directly impacts the playing field. And then it is about us. It's not the other way around, because we could have a question or a problem that might not be even relevant in 5 years' time if we haven't looked at the different shifts that are happening in the world around us. And this is an explanation of how traditional planning usually works versus what strategic foresight is. So today, the way that most of the companies are organized is we have a sort of habit to look at numbers and data and do research and ask consumers, and we have tons of internal information. With that information, we usually take it and we extrapolate it to the future directly. So it becomes a straight line. And we create this official future that we don't normally sense check that often. And it could be quite dangerous to live in that place. We're driven by internal ambitions, usually. And I think times are changing now because there's so much volatility. A lot more organizations are using the principles of foresight, if not foresight itself. The way that foresight operates is, yes, we still have that information from today and from yesterday. We take that into account. Of course, we take forecasts into account. But we also look at the trends. And there is a process and a tool set that we use to get to different future scenarios. And the difference is that if we don't do that, if we extrapolate and do the baseline approach, we will end up in future one, right? But what if there is a much, much better opportunity out there, which is future two? So unless we know the scope of the opportunity, where threats also pop up, and unless we go through this intellectual exercise, we will end up at future one. I think this also gives us the opportunity to create the future versus react to the future. So this is what strategic foresight does. Of course, there is a methodology, there are tools. I'm very interested in using some of these tools to enrich other toolkits. I don't like to come in and say, strategic foresight is going to fix all of your problems. But if strategic planning or innovation can become a little better through changing some of the tools, let's try it and let's do it. So there are a few companies. I did a research when I was doing my postgraduate degree, and it was in strategy and innovation, the postgraduate degree. And I decided to focus on strategic foresight and how strategic foresight can be used as a tool to improve the way that we innovate and therefore improve the longevity of the organization. At the time, I worked for the Walt Disney Company. And this is where I actually got trained to become a futurist. So at the Walt Disney Company, I had a strategic role. I was in charge of the UK and Ireland, and then the so-called markets of the future afterwards, for Disneyland Paris. So I was based in the UK, and I was responsible for creating the strategy. While I was there, I joined in 2015, and the external environment was quite volatile. There were terror attacks in France. There was a migrant crisis, so the transportation was not working correctly. Then we started talking about Brexit in the UK. Then Brexit happened, and nobody expected it. So all of this volatility, no matter how much internal data you have, you can never tell why things are not working just by analyzing the internal data. So I was super lucky at the time that I got the opportunity to join the team of Futurist. I was very excited to find a new tool set that could actually help my role as a strategist and made me a better strategist. Unlike other companies, with the Walt Disney Company at the time, this was a voluntary role, and it was a team that was spread out across the organization. There were about 500 people, I think 11 countries, that were trained to be foresight practitioners. All of us had different job titles, and we would work on specific projects for the company and enrich our own particular roles. It was a continuous kind of system that was working, and it was just an extra skill that most of us got. Rolls-Royce was another company that I was researching at the time. They had a completely different approach to foresight. It was 2014, and 3, I think, out of their 4 businesses suffered really badly. Their share price went down by 50%. They got a new CEO, and this CEO came in and said, let's gather the leadership team, and let's think about what the future is going to look like. So they created scenarios for 2040, and it was a one-off exercise. So it wasn't a system building, it wasn't a skill set that was built. It was a one-off exercise to see where the future is headed and try and bring back the company, which it did. And the last time I checked, they were still sense-checking their strategies against the scenarios. At the Lego Group, it's again a different approach. There is a team. I started working there 3 years ago. There were foresight efforts that were done before I came, but I'm the first professional futurist to join the team. We are part of the innovation department, so this is where we sit. However, what we're trying to establish is to have a continuous futures literacy and futures intelligence, and we work with a community of people who are interested and practice to a certain extent foresight, but also use this information. So for us, it's to inspire and inform, and it can be used, it's a foundational information. It can be used in strategy, it can be used in product development, in anywhere, really. So these are 3 different ways in which companies can organize to get the benefits of strategic foresight. And foresight can help with fueling innovation, because it can provide an opportunity to gather new ideas. It can provide you with a sense of what the future consumer needs will be, so that you are more well prepared for that future. It can also make strategy more resilient. It can be used to also sense check your current strategies against various different scenarios and see whether they are fit for the future, or you need to make certain changes and improvements. It can also serve as an always-on monitoring system and flag if there are any external challenges that you may not otherwise know. It can also help us to lead and to transform. As I said before, it's not only about following the trends and responding to the trends, but also you can create the future. You can change the future. Now, I was talking about mindset, and I was talking about seeking out various perspectives and different views on the world. And that is because we're full of bias, completely full of it. So I would like to play a game with you guys. And right now, I'm going to show you a sentence, and I would like to ask you to count the number of letters F in that sentence. F as in Frank. The catch is that you're going to have 5 seconds to do that, but it shouldn't be a problem because we can all read very fast. It's actually quite a lot of time, 5 seconds. So let's do that. Are you ready? Yes? Okay. I gave you 6 seconds. So, anyone? How many?
3.
Okay, 3. 4, 5. 6. 7. This is not Christie's. I want to say there is no right or wrong answer, but there is a right answer, and the right answer is 6. And the reason that some of you saw less, well, I cannot explain why you saw more, but I can explain why you saw less. And these are the Fs. The reason you saw less is because we are completely overloaded with information. Our brains receive 11 million pieces of information every single second. And this always blows my mind because I always want to say, we can only consciously process about 4,400. No, it's 40. We're capable of consciously processing 40 pieces of information per second. Okay, fair enough. It's a lot. And this is, for us, we are wired this way to remain sane because we're going to go crazy if that's not how it works. We go on autopilot, and that's why we jump to conclusions quickly. We don't see things. We don't see details that are important. And if we're looking for innovative ideas, or if we're looking for what is out there, what information is out there in the world that can disrupt us or can provide us with a new opportunity, we really need to know that this is how our brains work, and we need to slow down that process substantially. And this is why it's super important to talk to people who think very differently from you. And there are studies done by Philadelphia, I believe, professor about innovation and how the best innovation happens. And they took Ivy League people with similar backgrounds, and they put them against people who don't have that education but are very different. Guess who got the better innovative ideas? It was the second group. So with that in mind, I don't know if you thought you were going to just listen to what I have to say. I want to put you to work. So I would like us to work a little bit with trends. And the way this is going to work is I would like to ask you to stand up and form a group of 4 to 5 people. Ideally, people you don't know, because this is what we're testing here, right? So people you don't know, introduce yourselves, and the aim is to build better companies. But that's not the ultimate goal, right? We're here, we're listening about Europe, and if we're better, then Europe is better, right? Europe is stronger. So let's look at the different trends and discuss how we can find opportunities for a stronger Europe. The trends are split into different categories. I'm using the STEEP acronym. So they're social, technological, and I've put tech and science in the same place, environmental, economic, and political. And it really doesn't matter how we categorize the trends. What matters is that we take trends from different categories and we work with them together. So please take at least 3 trends. I'm going to leave them on the screen and answer the question or find opportunities for a stronger Europe. And we will have about 15 minutes for that. These are the trends. And as you do that, I'm going to come down and work with some of you. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for being brave and jumping into the discussion. Can we get back to plenary? And I have been around. I have seen heard some really, really interesting thoughts. We have 15 minutes until the end of the session, and I would really love to hear some of you, because, again, we're practicing foresight now. We have to hear other people's ideas and opinions and build on them. So I would like to ask the gentleman here, maybe, to share some of their thoughts. Did you find any exciting opportunities for your companies or for Europe while you were discussing the trends? Would you like to share some of them with us?
Yeah, I think what is obvious is that we need to work closer together. So we picked cultural diversity and regional cooperation. And regional, we also said, okay, maybe that's even global. So we need to open up a little bit more. On the other side, we said, okay, we can be proud of things we have. So we are very knowledgeable. We are good in sciences. So AI and robotics could be something where we could lead. And we discussed that in Germany. Schwarz Group has now bought a huge stake in an AI company. But it's only German companies that are investing there. So they have raised 500 million euros for this endeavor. Microsoft alone is spending 2 billion. So if we put the Swiss efforts together with the Germans and the French and the British, so we are more people, we have more money, so we would have far more power if we could define one standard there. And also if we do the same on defense, so we have different systems of weapons. Poland is not buying weapons from Germany and Switzerland because they are not sure if they can actually use them, if they really have to. And be more open for compromises here, but to get more horsepower on the street, if we build this together, that was a point that we have discussed.
I love that. Thank you so much. And only in 15 minutes, you solved so many problems. And thank you very much for including the UK as well. We spoke a little bit about, where did the gentleman go? Yes, so we spoke a little bit about cultural diversity. And would you like to share just a minute of what you were talking about? Because there is another trend that we discussed.
Yeah, well, we didn't come up with a solution. We just described the problem. So we picked mostly focused on cultural diversity and migration. And the problem of it's not cultural diversity is the fact that there's now a widespread rejection of cultural diversity. There's a lot of discourse built around the fact that, you know, like Europe needs to wake up to its values and defend them, and that sort of goes in all the sort of the whole speech is being built upon rejecting what's different. And you know, we now, after the elections from the Netherlands last night, we now have like officially, well, it still needs to go through a process, but probably the first prime minister elected that is openly anti-Muslim. Right, and this is a trend that's only just getting bigger in the European Union. So we can move past the description of the problem, so no solution.
But I think this is already very, very helpful, because then we also spoke about sometimes the world just takes a general direction. And yes, there is a counter position to fight against that. But if you put climate change and the fact that there's going to be more migration, then this is not really a sustainable way necessarily to fit into this new world. And if you think about the living companies and the traits that the living companies had, and the fact that some of these companies, the Sumitomo and Stora Enso, they started off as one thing, and they ended up as selling something completely different or branching out. I think it's part of the development of a company and a country to adapt, perhaps, and have this sensitivity to the world around.
Absolutely agree.
Great. Would you like to share? And then we'll move to a couple of other.
Yeah, I'd just like to add on to that. We had a discussion also about cultural diversity, and I think our strength and our potential strength in the European Union is that we embrace our cultural diversity, and that it is so amazing how different we all are. So we have to identify our commonalities, which will strengthen our collaboration, but at the same time sort of feel the pride of being such a diverse group of people that manage to work together. So I think that's something that we can move towards, and we work at Volt. We're a young political party, and this is exactly what we're trying to feed into the different national chapters that we have.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. Is there anyone else who got to a really interesting opportunity that wants to share? You guys? You guys, you? Okay. Yes, we spoke about some really interesting things. Would you like to share them with the audience?
Well, when you're asking like this, I have to, I guess. No, we were comparing like regional trade agreements, but also obstacles, as well as AI and robotics and anti-corruption, like being combined with new possibilities, for example, about blockchain. So I think that would be a great thing if you could do that like all over the world with having some blockchain technologies, making those obstacles like smaller. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And how amazing is it to put different people with different backgrounds together? I'm sure that you learned a lot just through the conversation. I love it. Thank you so much. You guys at the back, do you guys want to share the discussions that you had and maybe the fact that you couldn't stay within the borders of Europe? Yeah.
Well, thanks so much. Yeah, as you said, we kind of struggled a bit to stay on the continental level because we kind of drifted towards Switzerland and Germany, where we're from in that sense. So what we chose is renewable energy also, because I think on the one hand, we can tackle climate change, but I think a lot of people aren't aware of the fact that this also poses a huge business opportunity in terms of us transferring towards green economy. And I mean, for instance, Switzerland has a very ambitious climate policy finally, and in that sense, it's also gearing companies towards that green economy, so you have to embark on that journey, right? We also talked about migration in that sense, because as a continent, usually Europe profits from rather like brain gain than brain drain in that sense. But even though we profit economically, etc., the whole discourse is very negative. So and I think we have to change that framing in that sense. And then I'm not going to go into depth because most people already talked about AI and robotics. But yeah, that was something that we chose too. And then which one was the last? Policy innovations. So I think it was rather my personal opinion. That's why I'm saying I think. I think in terms of all the challenges that we have, political actors are those who are kind of acting as a multiplicator. And that's why policies can change a lot in that sense, but maybe we have to think policies differently. Instead of just like thinking of taxes and subsidies right away, we can start thinking of, different methods, how to come up with policies, etc., integrating various different stakeholders, integrating strategic foresight. So yeah, that was the things that we chose.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I know a lot of you talk about AI, and I think a lot about AI. Obviously, it's going to change a lot of things. But what I'm really curious about is how are we as humans going to evolve in the way that we communicate, in the way that our ecosystem may completely change. And I was having a discussion over lunch about that. Right now, humanity is at the top. We are the ones who make the rules. But what if nature, or what if AI becomes more powerful? Then we are part of this ecosystem. How will we change? What will it mean in the future to be a human? All very philosophical questions, but my point is, with AI, it's not only about the technology, it's about the people that will regulate the technology, but also how we react to that technology. So I think there are a lot of opportunities that AI will enable. And a lot of times, people say, AI has to be better. No, we as humans have to be better, because whether we take our values that we have on Earth to space or to AI, our values need to be better, so that before we export them somewhere else. So we have a little bit of time left, and I would like to ask if there is a question or...
I'd like to share what we did.
Yes, okay, great.
Can you hear me okay if I do loud?
I think we'll need the microphone.
All right, thank you. Hi, Chris Lubkeman from ETH, head of strategic foresight for ETH.
Oh, great.
So what we did was quite interesting, was taking a look at all 5 of these. We all chose which one we thought was the first most important for us, for Europe, and we tried to really make an effort to stay up on Europe, and we started looking at the amplification or damping effects of the different, a few of them together. And 4 of us chose aging, and 1 of us chose cultural diversity, and I guess you're going to have to guess which one chose cultural diversity versus the rest of us who chose aging. And so I think that's quite interesting in a group, as we're saying, to have very different lenses, different viewpoints, and to hear why one chose the different things. But we sort of put 2 of these together, which was sort of aging and AI, aging and inequality, or aging and migration. I'm trying to think of what are some of the impacts for us. And this is what we were really thinking about for migration as we're aging as a population, as a dude, sorry, you're in my face. I know it's your job, but I know. Sorry. Think how can robotics and AI help us age gracefully, or how migration is going to help dampen economic inequality. So trying to think of some of the primary and secondary impacts of each of these trends and as they work together. And it was a really, I thought, an interesting dialogue for us all. And we skipped over environment. I guess I called that one because we just were getting too deep into all everything, even though climate change is my big #1 driver. So it was really great, and thank you for bringing us to the Lucerne dialogue.
Well, thank you very much for having such amazing discussions and for sharing it with us. Okay, well, we are at time. Thank you very much for joining the session. Thank you for being very active and participating in this. I hope that the discussion has provoked some thoughts and maybe brought some hope as well in terms of making Europe stronger and building up for a better future for all of the generations to come. I would like to leave you with a quote. It's one of my favorite quotes. It's by Stephen Hawking. And it says, "We are all time travelers, journeying together into the future. But let us work together to make that future a place we want to visit. Be brave, be determined, overcome the odds. It can be done." Thank you very much.